Hey, good people. Welcome to the Evolving Education Project podcast, hosted by me, Dr. Tiffany M, Nyachae, and friends, where we center the educational joys, passions, interests, and inquiries of people of color. This is the first episode of season 2. Yes, we are on season 2. We will begin this season with a check-in for our audience and community who have stuck with us from the beginning and through our extended pause. We haven't aired an episode since the fall of 2021. Yikes. Therefore, this episode is appropriately titled, Dr. Nyachae, where you been? I need to explain myself. Where you been, girl? I am joined by 2 of my former 7th grade students. They're so cute. Sanders and Chelsea Thornton, who are now young adults, even though I will always see them as my little 7th graders. And they will facilitate a dialogic response to this question. Let's jump right in.
Hi, my name is Chelsea. I'm 24 years old. I know Dr. Nyachae here because she was my 7th grade teacher back when I was in middle school. But I met her when I was like 6 because she read us a story in my 1st grade class. So I've known Ms. Nyachae for many years, and it's great to be here today to be a part of this podcast. And yeah, I'm excited.
Hi, my name is Kenya. I am 23 years old, and I also have known Dr. Nyachae because she was my 7th grade teacher in middle school. And I am also just very excited to be here.
So I'm what y'all got to talk to me about today?
Well, somebody's been a bit MIA for some time. It's been how many years now?
Who?
21, 22,
3
23,
years. Oh, just about.
24. That's a lot of years to be gone from this podcast.
Where have you been?
What's been going on? You left us in the dark. You went on hiatus and didn't even let anybody know.
Ooh, I'm questioning my decisions now.
You blipped like they did at the end of Avengers.
That's what they did. They did
Left
what?
Without a trace. You blipped.
How do you say that? Blipped?
Blipped. BLIPPED. If you watch Avengers, they all just disappear randomly at the end of the Infinity War. That's what you did.
Oh,
you blipped.
That's what I did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Where do I begin?
Yeah.
What happened? I think what happened is that, so first of all, I am a assistant professor on a tenure track. And I think navigating everything with trying to do my research and publish articles so I could get tenure, and editing the episodes, and I did have a team of people I had one person who was helping me with stuff, but I realized I needed more help. And I think it's really hard to get help with the tedious stuff, with the organization, the editing, all of that type of stuff. And I've learned how I can do it now. And I think also just being on this journey of what should I be spending my time doing? I think I've always been torn with where I should be spending my time, because I miss being a classroom teacher. I love communities. And I think sometimes I'm always torn. I love research. I love everything that I do. And how much of being in, what does it mean for me as someone who wants to be a professor, has the demands of that, and getting tenure. I really have a heart and passion for my podcast, and there's a deep reason why I wanted to do it. And also not wanting to be so far removed from kids, from young people, from real teachers in classrooms, from communities. And I think being in an academic space and in universities is very easy to do that. And so I think it was just hard. Not only did I think, yes, I needed help, but I also think it's also about like me getting more clear, like about what I should be putting my time in doing and what's for me to do and what is not something I need to be doing. And it doesn't make me any less committed. It doesn't make me any less my activist spirit or like caring about certain things and what should I do. But I think like I was editing to get very specific.
This was the last straw that day.
Yes.
This is the last straw.
Yes, it is. It's like I was just editing, and I think I just kept getting behind with the editing. And then and at that time, I was like applying for fellowships and grants, and that takes another time commitment. And I started this out with like knowing that I needed help. Like I didn't just start this and just be like, I'm going to do it all. I had people, and some people like that would have helped me with the edit. It kind of fell through because people have their own things going on, and sometimes people can help and sometimes they can't. And so I'm not like mad or anything. Yeah. And so then I wound up having to do all the editing myself. And that wasn't something that I had planned on doing when I first started the podcast. Like, and I also was doing the producing. I was also like organizing guests and meeting with people, doing all of that administrative to like get the guests on and all, all of that, everything like that. And also teaching, like you teach, you have to write, you have to do service. Also was doing a lot of professional service that I'm learning. No offense. I hope my academic colleagues are listening, but I think that when you are a new professor, I think like you need to do some service, but all of these service positions that is like a position where you have, when you're first starting out, it's a lot. It takes a toll. Because it's a lot of labor. It's usually mostly women of color that do those positions. And it just takes a lot of time and I'm thankful for this. I'm not saying I won't go back to that, but I just think that it was just a lot. And this brings me joy. And I think sometimes when all of these things come up, I'll stop there so you can ask me another question, probe me a little bit because I'm all over the place. Y'all know y'all got to help me focus.
No, I think you're on the right track, honestly. This was something that brought you joy, but obviously, COVID pandemic, you said you were applying for your fellowships and stuff like that. It became more of a chore to you, I'm guessing, than an actual passion project. Do you think that's the case?
I think that the keeping up with the editing was a lot. It never became a chore to me. It's just like I just kept getting behind and behind and behind. And then you just keep, and then and then you feel like you're letting people down because you invited people on and then you didn't edit the episode and you're doing it all by yourself. And then I was running into like some tech issues with one episode that I was trying to do. It didn't record well. I was trying to figure that out. And then time is just going by and by. Like time just does not stop and let me catch up. Like time just does not stop. And I couldn't make.
This is a great story.
Oh, good. I hope so. I'm just being like, I don't know how, like, I'm going to talk all over the place because I'm just reflecting as I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it sounded like it was, sorry. It sounded like it was like burnout, a lot of burnout going on.
Yes. And I think, come on, heal me on the episode. Because that probably is what it was. I think I did so much service, which happens when people like to work with you. You're a decent person to work with. You're a woman of color, Black woman. and then other women of color. You know, I did so much service even as a doc student before I had even graduated. So I did a lot of service as a doc student, which helped me in my career because that's how you network. That's how you meet people, and you learn about how the field works. Any profession that you're in, if you start going to their conferences and then you start serving on things, you learn a lot. You grow really fast because it's helpful, because you learn how things work in ways that you wouldn't if you weren't in the behind the scenes things. But then I just kept getting service, and then people ask you, they mean well, they are trying to help your, you know, they may think that it may help your CV or whatever, and they enjoy working with you. And so it was hard for me to say, ooh, this is getting deep. It was hard for me to say no to certain people. It honestly, like mentors and people that you look up to, it's really hard to say no to. It's easy to say no to people who like, I don't really care for you. You're not really about the work, or like you're not a good person, or, you know, I can say no to you like not even bat an eye. So I don't have this issue where I have to do things. Like, I'm not one of the people where I'm like, I have to be on every committee. If I'm not on every committee, I've never been that. But I get very excited about opportunities, right? And I would think I had more capacity than I had. And then if the person was somebody I really looked up to or that mentored me and helped me, and they asked me to do something, I was going to say yes. And then I was feeling guilty then I started to get involved in community things because I felt guilty about not being in the community anymore. I felt guilty about not being in the classroom with children and teachers and in schools and people. I get it. I know why people like, I still want to be I'm going to be real. I still want to be respected by teachers in classrooms. I do. I still want to be valued and respected by teachers in the classroom because and children, and because that is where I started and that's where the work is really happening and that matters to me. I still want to be respected and valued and accountable and responsible to my communities, right? And I think being in this academic space, I lose my way sometime with what that looks like for me and my work and what I do.
Foundation. You're so good at this. Well, that brings me to my first question. So it's been about 3 to 4 years now. With all these things you are feeling, what's a way for you to sort of revamp this podcast while also incorporating the things you loved and the things you were afraid of losing, such as having a classroom space, having, like you said, educators, time with children and stuff like that? I don't know where I'm going with this, but kind of what have you come up with ideas to sort of take the best of both worlds and kind of breathe new life into this?
That is a brilliant question. I mean, and it's such a whole question. I think I've made peace with certain things. I think I've made peace with the fact that, and it's probably just happened like last week, that
Yeah.
it's okay if I am not the one that is directly teaching students, but I am influencing that space in other ways. It is okay. I just had a friend like really, because I was just last week trying to figure out wanting to tutor kids in literacy, like, and how am I gonna do that? Like, you know,
Yeah.
like, and wanted to like, maybe I can support others to do that, but I don't have to do the thing. And I think what it is like learning, like, I don't have to directly touch everything that I influence. And I think I'm a doer. I'm a person that I think I'm better in person. You know, I'm a person that I was raised like that. That's how I was raised. Like, we do the thing. We roll up our sleeves. We, you know, if this needs this, we're going to create the program and the thing to do it. But I have to learn, like, at my life right now, I don't always have to do that, but I can still support that. I can influence that. I can maybe support teachers to do that, or administrators or nonprofit folks to do that. And it still doesn't take away from my contribution. to the effort that we're all trying to do in our little spheres. And I think even when I was a teacher, you know, I did so much. Like, I didn't just teach in the classroom. And I think it's hard sometimes for people who were classroom teachers to come to this space and you really feel like you're not doing enough, or the level of work enough, or like, as it doesn't always feel as impactful as it did when you're in a classroom with these beautiful babies and they're like rooting you on. Like, you get feedback immediately all the time, good and bad or indifferent. Like, it's not even good and bad. Sometimes it's just, you know.
Did you draw a blank?
Yeah.
That's okay. No, you were doing
good.
really good. That was really good. Chelsea, just to fill you in, I had asked her.
Yes, please let me know.
I had asked her, well, what are ways that she can better incorporate? Because she said she missed the classroom, and she missed like being able to, you know, I guess have immediate feedback from the children and the teachers she was working with. And I was asking her, how would she be able to incorporate that into this podcast? And she said, very profoundly, that she's made peace that you can't always do everything. You can have an impact and I guess an influence on things you want to see come into fruition, but it's okay to just like step back and let that thing move naturally, as opposed to having to tackle every single goal, I guess. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
And I think I want to continue to answer your question, because I think you're reminding me of why I started this podcast too. Is I want it to be a space for teachers to come, and I want it to be a resource for teachers. I really do. I want it to be not just teachers, but educators, and all types of educators. If you're a homeschooling parent, if you work in a freedom school, if you're an educator in a nonprofit organization, and you're responsible for people of color, students of color, children of color, communities of color, I would like this to be a resource for them. I also would love to get to a point where educators, all types of educators, feel comfortable writing in. And I would love, that's like my dream. Like, we have a community audience, and that's writing in and asking questions from all the way from early childhood daycare to all the way to higher ed and beyond. I would love for folks to be able to write in and see this as their resource. As I would love for this to be like educators who, and advocates and activists, and who are concerned and fight for people of color, that they see this podcast as a space for them, that they can write in and not demand of me, but like, I want to talk. I would love it to become like the people's podcast, where it's like, you can write to me and say, we want to talk about this, and I can do that. Like the audience takes a form of ownership of it. I would still have to do it. I understand that, but I mean that they feel like this is theirs, and that this is useful. And that, and I also created it for teachers like me, because I desired these. People who already know my research have heard me say this before, but like, I really yearned for these types of conversations when I was a classroom teacher, and you just don't have access. Some schools do. I'm not going to say all schools don't. I have a lot of colleagues doing a lot of great work in a lot of different cities, but sometimes you don't have access to it. Or sometimes there are conversations. I think like sometimes we think education is only the responsibility of people who are teachers, like the concern of, or people who have children, who have children. Like we're seeing that in the politics now. Like, basically, if you don't have children, some folks feel like we shouldn't get the same amount of votes. Like, because if you don't have children, then you're not invested into the future. And I don't understand that, because I think everybody's children matter to me. Like, I'm invested in the future, whether I have children or not. And I also feel like, it breaks my heart sometimes how disregarded education is and how people just feel like nobody wants to be a teacher anymore, which I understand there's a lot more to it than people just not wanting to be a teacher. It's a lot of the money, it's the politics, it's a lot of stuff with that. But we need teachers. Like I and I also feel like it's such a disinvestment in education that is happening that is not going to help us get teachers ever. Like more teachers or recruit people to be teachers. But also I feel like I'm disheartened that I feel like folks are not mad enough. I just feel like it's just like, the schools are bad.
Yeah, I will say, oh, go ahead. I will say, like, something I noticed, like, this a person in my 20s, there's been a lot of, like, discussion online about, like, responsibility. And there's one extreme that's like, I don't plan on having kids. I don't have kids in my life, so why should I care? And then there's another half of the extreme that's like we said in current politics, saying like, oh, well, then you don't matter because you don't have kids, kind of thing. And it's just like that. It takes a village mentality is so important, and now more than ever, it's so important because even if I don't end up having kids, it's so crucial that the kids in my life have a proper education. They're not growing up in a world where like books are being banned and it's totally okay that these books are being banned, or they're growing up in a world where they can't talk about certain subjects because of constant changes in the government and stuff like that. And so I agree with what your point is 100%. I feel like has been a shift in like we're becoming less of a community focused society. It's becoming like purely individual, and the most vulnerable people in our society are going to suffer for that, and that is our children and elders and like I said, our disabled people. And so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking about that too, like as a young adult, what do we do,
And like to bounce off that, there is a lack of community. What's funny?
No, it's just the way you were just like, yeah.
No, because I was like thinking like it really does take a village. Like that might be something that was said more so in the past, but nowadays it's especially important because we are losing that lack of community, especially in the Black community. Like I am always on Twitter and I see the way Black people interact with each other, and there's just like no camaraderie going on. Like it feels like people are just like it's like a lot of infighting. It's like we need to stand together against like we're still like in a marginalized society, especially like with the election going on. Just now Trump was saying how Kamala wasn't Black, and there's people who are Black saying, yeah, I agree, she's not Black, she's just Indian. But first of all, that's not true. She can be both. That people can be biracial. Like that's the thing. They can be
multi-ethnic.
Ethnicity.
Multi-ethnic.
Oh yeah, that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like I don't see enough Black people on Twitter really rooting for Kamala because we just don't band together like we should. And I think this podcast would be a great foundation to like bring us together so we can come up with like maybe not necessarily a solution, but like next steps, a game plan, because we can't just leave the kids in the dust, especially with the climate that we live in today, like with politics, society, the media. There's a lot of ways where the kids can be stirred in the wrong direction, and it can happen very fast and
very
more
easily.
More often than not, there's no going back. Like as the kids will say, people are crashing out a lot in nowadays, and it's just something that it takes everybody. It not just educators, not just parents, but like even someone like people like us, like people in our 20s, whether we want to have kids or not. You just always have to look out for the children because they're gonna grow up, and like the generation, I know like specifically with our generation, we're having less kids as the years go on. People are having less children. So let's take care of the kids that we have now so that way they can become like a better generation later on so that they can keep like fighting and advocating for what people have done for the past, what we're doing now, because even though it seems like as the years go on, it can be like more I don't want to say aggressive, but like say like the Black Lives Matter. People were very loud and proud about that and was able to voice their advocacy and their opinions about it. And we want that to keep happening. We don't want to be silenced. We don't want it to be where we're regressing.
Yeah, like it's I'm sorry, we'll have you take the floor, Doctor. But
No.
I remember in college I took an African American literature class, very foundational to like where I am now, and we talked about the importance of education and revisiting uncomfortable truths. Like, I mean, there's so much discussion of we don't want slave movies anymore. We don't want, Black torture anymore. And I get that 100% as someone who wants to go into media and wants to write stories surrounding their culture. It's important. Like, why should that be our only story of suffering and stuff like that? But then at the same time, I look at, my niece and my nephew, what are they learning? And in school, when, like I mentioned before, stuff like critical race theory is seen as a bad thing just because we dare to talk about our past and stuff like that. It's concerning. And I think the discussion we had in my class was, what happens when we just become complacent and we don't talk about these things? Our stories just become more and more forgotten. And that's the quickest way. It's basically like a cultural genocide in a way. We lose these stories, we lose this history. We're taught that it doesn't matter. And then it opens up a wound where we can be attacked again. And we can have even more rights stripped from us because we've forgotten the importance of our history and what our ancestors did to get us here. So yeah, it's very important. Just rehashing that. And like, I just remember being in your class in like was it seventh grade or eighth grade too?
Seventh grade.
Yeah. And you were just so like, and at the, being like 11, and then you left us.
That's not what this show is about, but I did. But if you want to make this show about that, we can.
But you were so like we grew up in a very, yeah, we grew up, and our school had its flaws definitely, but having teachers like you be like the face of pro-Blackness and Black pride and stuff like that, it really developed us in a positive way. And it's worrying that we're seeing less and less of that for the generation. So you having this podcast and connecting the teachers and reminding teachers that like this is important, and they have, not just teachers but everybody, all adults have a job with their the children of today to just keep promoting that and keep encouraging learning all that stuff. It's very, very important. So I'm at your goal of connecting with more teachers and becoming an outlet for more teachers is it's just an incredible one, because that's what people need right now.
You all said so much. I love this journey that both of your statements are taking me on, because I do think what you're talking about with the loss of history and an understanding of, I don't even think they're teaching general civics or general social studies or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why you get to what you're saying is how we get to what Chelsea says, what she sees now with this election, where you see young Black folks saying things like, I'm not voting for Harris, or who's this and she's that and all that, which I want us to have, it's okay for young people, your age group, who are voting to say, I don't like this candidate. I don't think we all have to, just because you're Black doesn't mean that I agree with your politics or how you move or all of that. But I do think because we don't understand political strategy, because we don't understand history, because we don't understand those things, then it's not just as simple as I don't like her, so that's it. So
Yeah.
I think what I would like to ask folks who say that, because you don't have to like her. We're not asking you to like her. We're not asking you to agree with everything that she does. But we are saying what is the strategy here, right? So like,
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna say we, because I hate using the word we, because who is the we? I don't even know who I stand with in terms of Black people in my politics. I don't know who I know, but like I'm not just gonna use this general we because
Right.
I don't know that. But I will say that when people don't understand that, or even like I will see young people that I know that's around your age critique Meg Thee Stallion being at a Kamala Harris event when you like that's inappropriate. That's this and that's that. But I'm just like, I find that very odd when this is what I find fascinating. And I'm going to say this the best way I can, but everybody, I just may not say this correctly, but I find it very interesting. The folks that I see like, that's so inappropriate, that young people, like I would expect it from like my age group or older, but like very young people, like 19 to 25, saying that's inappropriate for her to have Meg Thee Stallion. And I'm just like, but you turn up like that. Like I see you turn up like that. You dress like that. You turn up like that. So
Yeah.
have you seen that? And I'm just like, well, I also think they're saying like they don't like Kamala because she brought Meg. And I'm Meg Thee Stallion. And I'm just like that was inappropriate of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. Let me be respectful and say her full name. Kamala Harris, because I think if it was Barack Obama and he was running, I would have said Barack Obama. So I'm going to say Kamala Harris. I think that like it was inappropriate for her, and it could be she's pandering, or it could be she understands that there are a lot of different people in the US that need to vote, and it could be a lot of things. But I just feel like when we start getting into the respectability stuff and we start saying it's inappropriate, and I'm just like, it's always the people who do that and then some that be saying something is inappropriate. I'm just like, and I also want to ask them, if I could ask, I would ask like, what is your alternatives? Like, are you just not going to participate in voting at all? There are people who are going to do that. I'm not getting into that discussion, but there are people who are going to do that. Or are you saying you dislike Kamala Harris so much that it's going to force you to vote for Donald Trump? Like, I need to know what what does this mean? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I wonder. Like, because it really it doesn't matter if you like her or not at this point. We in such a dire situation. It's just a dire situation. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying like it all goes back to education because um I remember watching this video my mom had showed me about, you know, the president. Yeah, your president is an important role and you should be voting, whether it be Democratic, Republic, even third party, I don't know. But it's the legislative branch that we should be really paying attention to. And yet that always goes under the rug. And then we're confused when these policies are being placed like, oh my God, who voted for that guy? It was like, we should be voting for these people. And like the president can't just like say, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to do all that. There has to be a judicial branch. There has to be the legislative branch. They have to go through these things before they can, and if we're not actively participating in those elections, then I don't know, I think about the snowball effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now our problems are getting bigger because we now have a person in place who will enforce the policies that have been in the making for years. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making a
I
lot of
guess
sense.
but just like, that's what I mean. Like, it comes down to educating all of us. We should be able to know when these elections are and just how important those are. Not just the general election, it's not the Super Bowl.
Right.
We shouldn't treat it like the Super Bowl. It should be like, I don't know. We should know more, definitely. and know our power in it.
I love that. And I also think, to what you were saying, Kenya, is different elections. It's not just this election, and it's different ways. What I would like to see more conversations around is other different ways to participate politically besides voting. It's not only voting. You should vote. You know, if you choose not to vote, I respect that. But you know, voting is one. I feel like we only talk about voting, and I feel like there are other ways that we should participate, politically, that can prepare you for a vote. You know what I mean? Like, can prepare you. Like, we can't get all in an uproar just when it's presidential season or it's an election or whatever. There's a lot of things happening all the time. There's a lot of things going on that are affecting our communities, that's affecting, like, that's why it's important to vote locally. Like, I heard what you were saying, Kenya, and to understand, like, the older people is not handling it, as we can see. So my, I'm like, probably, I'm a whole different generation. I think I'm the generation ahead of y'all. But, like, you have to do it. Like, it's with you. And but we have to be thinking about this stuff, not to let it consume us, but we have to be thinking about all of this before elections, before somebody gets shot by the police. I just feel like, in this, we Sonia Macy, may she rest in peace. And I want us to, it's heartbreaking. It's sad. And I think, and it makes me angry. It really makes me angry. But I would love for us to, what are we doing when a police shooting hadn't happened? Like, what are you doing? Like, we also can't act only through suffering and through tragedy. Like, that can't be our only time to act, or a circus like this election. Like, then that's what we would act, right? Because it's a circus. That's, to me, But I do think, like, and that's something that I'm always asking myself, and I would love for people my age, older, because I think, like, what I heard when I was younger was, you gotta vote, you gotta vote, you gotta vote, and that's all I heard, nothing else. So then when other things would happen, what do I do in this situation? This, like, if somebody gets shot by a police officer, voting, like, like, voting is so far away. Or, I mean, I could vote for the sheriff, I guess. But I mean, like, like, it's just so, it's not touching the situation. And so what are the other ways that, and even if we think about, like, Palestine, the situation in Gaza, and folks saying, like, that don't got nothing to do with me or my people, but it does have something to do with you, even if you're not Palestinian. Like, it's the threat of freedom, like, everywhere. And I do think, like, we hear that a lot. So what is our, like, when it's not time to vote and something like Palestine is going on, what do you do politically? Everybody can't do the same thing. And we're not saying, like, everybody, but there's a lot of things we need to be concerned about, and there's a lot of things that affect us. And so I love what you said, do what you can. I think if we all go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Actually, I'm reading a book. I recommended Dr. Nyachae because you've been in academia. It's called Babel. Written by Rebecca Kwong. I think she goes by R.F. Kwong, but it talks about it takes place in the Victorian era, but it talks about Oxford and this Chinese immigrant who gets not really a scholarship, but he goes to Oxford, and there's a lot that goes on. It's kind of like a fantasy fiction sort of thing.
Mm.
Um, but a big thing about it is like complacency, and specifically like the complacency of academia, like arguing about all these rights and only I guess like only talking about freedoms and rights and activism in an academic sense, but never applying it, like thinking it's all theoretical and not something that's actually happening to people. And it also talks about getting too comfortable with, oh, it doesn't apply to me, so why should I do anything about it? Like, oh, it's so far away, why should I care, kind of thing. And I don't know, Chelsea brought that up. Like, it's always, so long as we are alive, it's always close to you.
Mm.
No matter, you might not think it or see it right away, but it's like it affects everyone. And that's what it reminded me of, that book. And just like, we have to care. Even if we think it's so far away, we have to care. We have to be able to. I think accessibility is another thing. Some people just have to know just how close this is to them and ways that they can support, even if it is even if they're not like a politician who can sign off on stuff. So yeah. So podcasts like these helps. It helps them like wake up and be like, oh, well, how can I get involved in my community to make sure that, you know what I mean? Like community action and stuff. What do you do?
I'm also gonna be doing, because you asked me, Kenya asked me this great question about my passions and all this. So one thing that
Mhm.
I love, that I do a lot of, that I would do for free, is I watch a lot of TV and a lot of movies. And if I could have another career, I would review movies. So another thing I'm going to be doing is having discussions about series, movies, and not just current stuff, like even stuff from the past, and that center people of color, usually youth of color, or like education is, it may be a main character or a embedded character, or it may not be like but like communities and people of color and things like that. So it doesn't have to just be school, but it can be like implied. Like it can, like there's some films that I feel I really see. I'm not gonna. I was gonna name some, but I don't want to tell everybody yet what shows we're gonna do. But I have some. But I feel like there are some shows that are like about a whole bunch of things, but my educator I see the education piece in it. I just don't want to say the show. When we start recording, I'll tell you the show I'm talking about. But like there's like this like um youth of color thing, and how this works and all this, and I can see that. And so I would love to even like take certain series and just talk about that aspect of it and break that down and analyze
Mhm.
it, of a show that
Mhm.
most people may watch for the comedy or the relationships or like the romance or whatever. But through my lens, through this podcast, I would like look at it this way.
Oh, that's fun.
So
Oh, you gotta tell me when it releases. I love that. Your face.
I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about that, because I do think, to your original question, Kenya, like that is also about making it the passion, and then your questions about like how do I merge it, right? And Chelsea's observation of burnout, she was like, that sounds like burnout. I was like, it was. But I don't want to get burnt out about this. This isn't what I'm supposed to get burnt out. And it's so funny because my mom is like is a my mother is a spiritual woman. She's anointed. She has all that. So she interprets dreams. So I will go to her and I'll be like, Mom, I had this dream, and she'll be like, well, what do you think? I'm like, could you just tell me what this means, like you did for the other person? But all through these 3 years, I'll be like, Mom, I will call her and be like, should I really be doing this podcast? I'm not getting it done. It's just not, it's not working. I just keep falling behind and behind. She said, don't give that up. I don't think that's what you should give up. And you have your person that you trust. And even my husband, my lovely husband is always like, babe, do your podcast, and I think people in our lives that know you very intimately, the stuff that everybody sees and the stuff people don't see, and the beautiful parts about you and the not so beautiful parts about you, right? I think they have sometimes, if they're really in your corner, in your best interest, they have and they really love you fully and wholly. They have a good insight to like when something is on or off, like. And so I've asked my mother, and she's like, "No, Tiffany," and I was like, "You should like." And it's almost like I was asking, and sometimes it helps me to. I think when you like to do things in excellence, and you feel like this is something you love so much, and you're not doing it excellently, you're like, then I just shouldn't do it. And that's not always the case. You're learning how to. Dr. April Baker Bell, I'm going to shout her out. Because she was in my very first series, and I talked to her about this, and I was like, and she just was like, Tiffany, sometimes you don't have a model. Sometimes you don't have a model for navigating all the things you're trying to do, and you just have to figure it out. And you're learning day by day, and not figure it out. Leave me in Nicole. She wasn't saying that, but like you can create what this looks like for you. What does it look like to be a researcher? I love my research. I like writing articles. I'm not some people don't like it, and that's okay. I do like it, and doing all of that, and also having your podcast and doing all that. Like, what does that look like for you? How can you create your day-to-day and your life so that those pieces come together? And that was some really great feedback. And also my mom and my man, supportive and being like, no, you should do that. So that's great.
Aww.
Yes. And do you remember? And also, I have to say, before we get off, I got the idea for this episode. Y'all just such a blessing to me. I'll just say we were doing another project together. I'll just say that. And Kenya hadn't heard from me for a while. And so when I text them to like get back, and Kenya was like, Miss Nyachae, where you been? And I thought about that. And so I had to explain where have I been? Like just ghosting people and then like coming back. So audience, I'm sorry for ghosting you. I love y'all. I thought about y'all all 3 years. But I'm back. It was me. It wasn't you. It's not you. It's me. That's true though. But okay. I'm back.
Yep.
Ready.
Alrighty.
Yes. And I don't know if they know it, but in the future, we hope we will have Kenya and Chelsea back again, because I would love when they are available. They are very busy, but they always make time for me. I'm spoiled. But love you both so much. Thank you so much for listening to this check-in episode. And as you can see, we had a lot to check in about. From where I've been for the past 3 years, to the presidential election, to the Black community, to how the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza is closer to us than you may realize. Due to technology issues, some of Chelsea's contributions to this dialogue did not record, unfortunately, but we'll just have to have her back on the show. One major takeaway for me from the recorded and unrecorded dialogue is that we must invest in our futures by caring for and educating the children, whether you have children or not. Remember, it takes a village. To find out more about the Evolving Education Project, to write in, or to join our listserv, check us out at evolvingeducationproject.com. And please download this podcast, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook. If you can only choose one, please follow us on Instagram and love all of our posts. This is support that doesn't cost a dime. If you've been enjoying our podcast, you can also support us by writing a review. Favorable reviews help more educators, organizers, families, communities, and activists to find us. We hope to continue to cultivate an authentic audience and community. We want you to help us to evolve over time and shape what this could be. Now that you know what we're about and where I've been, let us know what you want to learn more about, authors that you would like us to interview, discussions you would like to have. Also, please write in by sharing your stories, dilemmas, joys, a related incident that made you laugh, questions, disbeliefs, hopes, and more when it comes to people of color. You can write in through the website, but if you ain't got time for all that, I get it. Write in by sending us a DM through any of our social media outlets. And if you don't want to type it out, you can write in by sending us a voice memo, audio recording, or video. All of this counts as a write-in. Okay, so who should write in? Children and youth of color, parents and caregivers of children and youth of color, traditional and non-traditional educators, teachers, leaders, administrators from early childhood to higher ed and beyond, activists, organizers, artists, authors, community workers, leaders, nonprofit, not-for-profit folks, and anyone, well, basically anyone, who loves people of color, is invested in their humanities, past, present, and futures, and wants to make social justice a reality. We will discuss your write-ins on the show anonymously, unless you tell us otherwise, so don't miss it. Tune in next Wednesday for a new episode that will mark the beginning of our next series. Okay, that's all for now, good people. We out.